Okay, is that it?
We're live.
All right, live. Craig, I thought of a great drinking game for this week's podcast.
Okay.
Everybody at home, whenever Shane uses a superlative adverb, take a shot. I know I'm going to.
All right.
Arcade.
This is click, click, boom.
Arcade. Arcade.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Arcade Comics Podcast. This is Craig Ray.
And I'm Shane Pace.
We are doing an episode called Click, Click, Boom today, honoring the publisher Boom Studios.
Yeah.
And we're going to be rattling through some of our favorite Boom books and then possibly maybe even a short history, Shane.
I think so, or a long one if I get into my cups
If we play our
to see
cards
how many
right.
adverbs I use. I think it's a great choice. It's gonna be our Martin Luther King Day episode.
Absolutely.
So that's exciting. That's festive. Do you remember? I was thinking about this. Do you remember in the '90s, like you couldn't get like an Entertainment Weekly or a People magazine, and they always had those great "Got MLK" ads
Yes.
with like.
Yeah, those were crazy. Like celebrities all over
I
the
remember.
place.
I still like I had the Cindy Crawford one like on my wall, but it's terrific. Yeah, huge proponents of civil rights, great allies in the dairy industry. But it is a good.
That is so bad.
I personally, I think civil rights are great. But again, here's the guy that didn't want to kill Hitler. Well, we're gonna jump right into it.
Sure.
What you just got to read it, so it's fresh in your mind. There's a huge Boom book, which was kind of the impetus for this.
Yeah, I wanted to do two of them because they're kind of current, and I don't know if the other one. Well, we're going to go with Animal Pound. That's going to be the lion's share of it, but I want to give some mention to The Space Between, which is currently it's going to be a 4-issue, and there's two of them that are
Space
out.
between.
But let's do Animal Pound because I know we've both done that
Yeah.
one, and it is fresh.
So Animal Pound is it's gonna be a short series. I think 4 issues by Tom King, in his first Boom comic,
own.
and it was drawn by Peter Gross of Lucifer fame, not the the actual Prince of Darkness, but the comic in this case.
Sure.
I don't know about his personal life. And the first issue's out, and I thought it was terrific. Take a shot. It's interesting because it's like grafting it's a reinterpretation of a comic reinterpretation of a already allegorical work of fiction, prose novel, dealing with the rise of Marxism, communism in Soviet era Russia. You guys have all been through grade school. You had to read it. And here it transplants. It still uses animals, but rather than farm animals on a farm, it is, as you can imagine, cats and dogs and rabbits
in a pound.
in a pound.
Yes, sir.
But you still have all your laterals. I think the cats are going to be evil in this, like they are in real life. And then Titan, I think, is going to end up being a boxer who represented the proletariat or the working class in the book. But all of the righteous anger that Orwell worked in the beginning of Animal Farm is there.
Yes.
And it was really interesting. I'm trying to.
I said it when I was just reading it. I was like, Tom King doesn't like people very much, does he?
No, and especially when you get them into a collective, which is
Right.
ironic. I was thinking about because it puts me in mind of Orwell. He gets Orwell's I won't say voice, but he gets the themes. He gets the feel of what Orwell was going for very well. Like this I don't know. It's like anger mixed with sadness. I read a book Orwell wrote about 12 or 13 years before Animal Farm, because Animal Farm was what, 45, 46, right before the rest of the world got the whole Iron Curtain, and it was called Down and Out in Paris and London, just about the poor and the working class and struggling through poverty in Paris and London at that time, and just trying to make it by, and what that's like, and what collectivism could or couldn't do.
45, August 17th. August 17th,
Nailed it.
45.
What the state could do to help them, what the state could do to improve the lives of the poor. And then, 12, 13 years later, he writes Animal Farm. Doesn't seem like his views were helped by time and knowing people. I do know that he was not a communist, and the book Animal Farm is certainly not pro-communist. He is a democratic socialist, so, obviously I have an affinity for him, as you can imagine. And this book right here, I'm wondering like how much of the allegorical stuff about the working class and being subjugated by what eventually became Stalin and Stalinism and that version of communism, which differs from Marxism, as you all know. And then I saw the Trotsky lateral, and it's like, what is going to be Trotsky's like, murder? And is that going to be worked in? Hopefully so. But it really was it was a biting comic. It moved. It was a lot of fun. And if you don't know the story, like what it's referencing, I don't know. Your mileage may vary, but if you're a kid and you have to do this, your 10th grade book report, and you don't want to read that whole book, you should. But this would be a nice Cliff Notes version to do in the meantime.
Well, I am that audience. Admittedly, I'm not as well learned and read as far as you are in all of that. No, I couldn't rattle the dates off. Animal Farm, yes, I'm familiar, but I like that it takes the animals and the classes and stuff. Like, sure, it even splits it. Like, there are dogs and there are cats, and if we would just work together, to overthrow this system, then it's very well done. The art is fantastic. Just bring it back to the comic
gross
level.
Always comes with
yes, but it's like very emotive, and I love, like, I said this last time. I'm just a sucker for seeing word bubbles over animals. I'm going to bring it way back down.
We can all agree with that. We can all agree with that. Animal books are always great. He also used like the relative intelligences of the different species. Like cats are known to be perceived to be smarter than dogs, just like in the book, pigs are perceived to be smarter than horses.
And when the dogs talk about the cats, it's like, we have a life of servitude, they have a life of pleasure,
right,
type of thing, where like they notice the differences.
From where we come. I remember though when it was first announced, I thought it was a very strange title for Tom King to pick. And then the more I think about it, the more it makes sense, because Tom King is very word oriented, but he's very careful with his words. He chooses them very carefully. Like the erudition in his bubbles are, or in his narration, it's always like, this is very precise. Anyone who's reading his Penguin right now knows how precise he is. Or like we mentioned last week, Danger Street, everything is like everything in its place, and that in itself is very Orwellian, because George Orwell knew the power of words. That's what 1984 was about, and that's where I do think it's interesting too, because that's not his name. He was born George Orwell's Eric Blair is his real name, and yet we call things Orwellian, and there's some irony in there that like the actual wordplay wasn't even based on his real name, and that's the power of words, the power of what they can do. So maybe Tom King.
Would you prefer Blairian? No.
No. Orwellian does sound much better. I don't know where he picked up the name. I'm sure that's somewhere to find, but so far. Great first issue, and it's a great way to. I love Tom King dipping his toes in creator-owned stuff, because he's got the what is it, Tales of Wyndham coming out too in a few months, with again teaming back up with Bill Everly, who he did Supergirl with, which is great. And then what's the other one he's working on right now? Oh, Love Everlasting.
Yep, Love
which
Everlasting.
I'm having with the great Elsa Charretier,
which is back, and I just ordered number 12 today.
Boy, that's getting downright bonkers.
Yeah,
it's been a slow burn, but one that's definitely been rewarding. But again, as long as he stays with DC and keeps up the level of quality he has with those titles, as with everything else he does, I think again, the future of comics, business wise may not be great, but creatively, I don't think it's ever looked as good.
It's a fantastic book. I've been meaning to get to actually read it for a while now, and this held my feet to the fire. It's been. They did the Ash Can like about a month ago, and there's a lot of excitement around that. And then reading it, it's very Tom King. Like it's wordy, it's very full of ideas. But I love Tom King.
Wordy, so but it moves like Tom King does. Like there are writers where it's like you see all the words on the page, like, boy, you better have a reason for this, and they don't always justify it. But with somebody like Tom King or Jonathan Hickman or my beloved Mark Russell, it's like I the more the merrier. I want to know more of what you have to say.
Yeah.
What was the other one you were saying?
So the other one is a book. It's just issue 2. Issue 3 is coming out. It's called The Space Between, and I'm bringing it up because it is another Boom book by Karina Beckico, and then Danny Luckert did the art, which that's what drew me in, was the Luckert angle. I like his art a lot, and then because he had done Something Is Killing the Children, like incentive covers and things like that. So he's kind of like very entrenched in the.
This is the what was the comic that I found, and then you were like, "That's Danny Leckert," because I was like, "The art's so great," and then I just couldn't, and now I see him everywhere. I didn't. He was a completely unknown quantity to me, and he's
forget
fantastic.
the conversation as far as what the book was.
It was the interiors on something that were great.
So he's drawing this one, and it's kind of, I don't want to say it's the same thing, but it's a class-based type of book. So the space between is, it's in the somewhat distant future, and everybody that's left in all of humanity. So think like, what was the train movie? It was a movie first, and then became the series. I don't know why I'm completely blanking.
Oh, Snowpiercer.
Snowpiercer-ish.
Talk about. Yeah, that movie was angry. That was great.
So it's like that, but in space, and there's a spaceship, and there's this lady. It starts off where there's like she's a hot shot, like she's like a pilot class. So there's like people that are pilots, and anyway, she gets restless one night, and she goes and she like falls off this ladder, and she ends up in these lower decks where she didn't even know there were people there. And those are the people that make the stuff run. So that's where like vegetation is. Like I didn't know, where the food came from. So she falls into like a filtration plant thing, and some guy pulls her out.
Boy,
anyway,
this is manna from heaven to a democratic socialist.
It's
all right.
Cool. So they end up getting together. She pulls some stunt where she didn't follow orders, and they take her and they put her in custody. Well, she escapes custody, and she ends up going into these lower levels and gets stuck there. She runs into this guy. They kind of like make a connection, and of course, obviously, they blame him, even though she was the one that was like, whatever. Anyway, they ended up not being strangers. There's a lot of stuff that progresses with it, but it's another book I was bringing in. When we tie this back in, it deals with class a lot. Right. And it's super interesting. I've loved the art so far. It's 4 issues as of now. I can see this being one of those things where, they're testing it with 4, and they'll see how it does, and it moves on. But the first 2 issues are out. I've been having a great time with it. 3 comes out soon. I ordered 4 today, so that's next month. So I'm imagining, I think Space Between number 3 will probably be next week.
Boy, I got to jump on that. And for anybody who wants to do extra credit at home, the Snowpiercer comic, it's fine. It's a French comic. It's fine. The film, though, by Bong Joon-ho, absolute masterpiece. And if you really want to go deeper on that, he's also the fine South Korean filmmaker of such films as Parasite, The Host, and Memories of Murder. But I digress.
The show was great, though, too.
I didn't see the show, but it did have mine and everybody else's beloved
Jennifer Connelly.
Yep. It looked great.
And David Diggs.
Oh, I didn't know he was in that.
Yep.
Cool.
It's cool stuff.
But anyway, we're off and running. We're talking about Boom Studios today. Now, Boom Studios is an independent publisher. It's founded in June 1st, 2005. So as of June 1st this year, it was able to vote.
Nice.
Yes. It was founded by Ross Ritchie and Andrew Cosby, 2 industry veterans. They'd been in the game for a while. They both written, but nothing that I really was familiar with, so it can't be that important. Now, Andrew Cosby, though, is of note because he wrote the script for the 2019 Hellboy film, which has to be one of the worst things that Cosby's ever done. You know what's interesting about that movie,
Cosby?
Though? And we've talked about this. I saw that movie. I don't remember much. I was hammered, which is probably good. But I do remember they got Lobster Johnson exactly right.
Yeah.
There's a Lobster Johnson scene. It was a set piece, and it was terrific. I think Thomas Hayden Church from the very, very terrific, very popular 90s sitcom Wings was Lobster Johnson, and it was fantastic. And the movie kept going after that. There's nothing I could do to stop it. And I was just like, how did they get Lobster Johnson, one of the greatest characters in the Western canon, up there with David Copperfield, with Sherlock Holmes, Lobster Johnson? They got that part right, but they couldn't get the rest right. The rest was just a swing and a miss. Anyway.
So, the purpose of Boom originally, I think it was kind of,
I
hear you. I feel like it was like a studio kind of set up for adapting properties, more or less, right? As in, like, original stuff would be easily transferred into possibly somebody picking it up, or shows that already existed could find a comic medium, right?
And then over the years, they became one of the havens for creator owns. Now, I know, I don't know the specifics, but I know the numbers are not quite the deals aren't quite as good as the Image creators get, but it is comparable. It is very very open to artists, very open to creators. So it's very welcome. It's a good place for them to work. I also know this is of note. I think I told you this that 20th Century Fox has a minority stake. They bought $10 million worth of Boom Studios in 2019, which then, since 20th Century Fox was bought by Disney, like most things, now Disney owns part of Boom Studios. Luckily, it doesn't look like they figured that out yet, because eventually they will, and then the comics will get bad. But right now, they're just enjoying that Disney backing and putting out fantastic books, and we're going to talk about some today.
Yeah. So I guess to go into that also, they've got the Boom imprint, but like the other ones, they have Boom. What's their young adult one?
Boombox.
Boombox. Yes. And then the youngest one is the Kablowie or
Kaboom.
Kaboom. There you go. Kaboom is the young kid, like the kids one. So
and then there's a few. They in 2013 they acquired a small publisher called Archaea, and there's going to be a few of those their books that are going to appear on the list later. So Archaea is very interesting, and you'll find out why.
Cool. So do you want to say anything else about the history to make that, or are you just ready to get into some books?
Yeah, we have I counted down my top 10 to 1 based on merit. Craig also has 10 comics he's going to share.
I've said it before. I hate this numbering thing. I mean, I'll get on board, but
you know, if my parents numbered us by merit, I think I can number these comics by merit.
I can see when you put it that way.
Yeah,
sure.
So who wants to start off? We're going to do it like we love our lists. We're going to go 10 to 1, just like last week.
I want you to go first with your number 10.
Okay, I would love to. First, as per usual, you guys know me. I love my honorable mentions. So I'm going to rattle off just a few, very quickly. They're one of their biggest licensing deals was with Power Rangers, and
yep.
What is the original Japanese show and Super Sentai, and how each I didn't know anything about that years ago when I watched in the 90s when I watched the
Power Rangers show,
great Power Rangers show,
yeah.
But with Billy and Tommy and Zach and Trini, and this is adapting. It starts with those years. And it's Kyle Higgins and Ryan Parrott.
Yep.
And they tell this story over several years with those characters, but instead of changing them each season, like the actual show did, Saban was a mad genius. It just tells this whole saga, and then it becomes like a cosmic saga, and it was a real big surprise and a terrific surprise. Anybody who's read the Boom Studios Power Rangers knows that they ended up being not just great comics, but better than anybody would have expected. I certainly didn't.
And for a fun fact on that stuff, the Massiveverse kind of spun out of their working relationship together.
Yeah,
beyond that,
because that they did Radiant Black,
and Rogue Sun is the Parrot book.
Right.
So they've still got that relationship.
They created their own Power Rangers universe,
more or less.
Yeah,
which is cool.
Yeah, any teams that are color coordinated like that, I'm a sucker for. Like at the end of Guardians when they all have the
Yeah.
Let's look like a team, guys. Also, I have a book that came out. I finished in 2023. It was called The Approach. It was a horror book.
Yep.
6 issues by Jason Hurley with art by Jeremy Hahn. This book, this is the best 90s action movie that never got made. This was an absolutely a gem of a book. It takes place in the cold.
It was solicited as travel horror.
That is, that's fine.
I didn't know that was a genre.
Neither did I, but
cool.
It should be. Maybe they're spearheading one. These creators I never really heard of, and then this book just came out of nowhere, and I picked up the first issue. I was like, that is a perfect first issue. And the whole thing moves. It's out in a collection right now, and that's I think the best way to read it because it does move so quickly, and it's the way it ends, the way it wraps up is so satisfying. And you can just imagine like at the end of all those great action movies where everybody's on talking around cop cars and ambulances, talking about the adventures they just had. You could just picture like Bruce Willis or Denzel Washington at the end of this one, like talk like, "Whoa, what a crazy adventure we just had!" Terrific book, The Approach. And then the last one is a book called Once and Future by Kieran Gillen and our beloved
Mora.
Beautiful fallen creature, Dan Mora. This is a book that almost made the list. It's about how the guy who's a professor, he notices things start happening, weird stuff, and he's like, we need to go. Him and his fiance, we need to go find my grandma. She knows how to deal with the medieval monsters. And she, of course, they go off on this adventure, and it's about like all these folklorish English things. Like King Arthur shows up, Merlin shows up, eventually Robin Hood shows up, and they're all in present day, and they're all fighting for control of England. And it's very one of those very Alan Moore ideas about how belief in fiction and fiction itself manifests into reality. A good example Alan Moore says is the Victorian era England that we all know is not how it was, it's how Dickens wrote it. And that's what those are the ideas explored in Once and Future, and it's done very, very well. I think Kieran Gillen is either all hit or all miss. This one was all hit. So those are 3 books. Check them out if you get a chance. But anyway, now we're going to go into the top 10.
There we go.
All right. Whew, let me take a breath. God. And you guys can't see, but I do this on a treadmill at 4.7 because I got to get my steps in at the same time. So, number 10 is a relatively new book, last few years. Another horror book. It's called Grimm.
Yep.
By Stephanie Phillips with art by Flaviano. Now, normally, unless you're Cher, I do not like people who go by one names. But when your art's this good, all right, Flaviano, it's good to meet you. Grimm is a story about a girl who she dies, and when you die, some souls are chosen to become Grim Reapers because the guy can't do it all himself, so they have to go around and take other souls. She didn't sign up for this. She's not happy about this, but what are you gonna do? Say no? And then she comes to find out that she is maybe of a special heritage. She her parents may be certain unearthly beings that make her special for some reason. And now we're well past, like, the first arc was very solid, and it seemed like it could have ended there. Now we're on to issue 13 or 14, and we're in new territory. I don't know if it's going to stay as strong because it was such a tight story, but there was a point where because she didn't want to do it, she kind of stepped away, and then nobody could die because there were no Grim Reapers, no major Grim Reapers doing the work, and that was fun. But it is very interesting. It's a great book about what life and death means and what family means. And as always, I'm all about that stuff. The art, as we said, is terrific, and it's just it has a look all its own, and I just love it. I still like reading it every week or every month. And Stephanie Phillips is one of my favorite creators, and I just like this book.
So I'm going to touch on something you said. So I feel like this one was I like Grimm. Don't get me wrong at all, but it does feel somewhat like it's a victim of its own success, and people were kind of going, they were going gaga over it. Like, number 1 went into like a 5th printing and things like that. It just kept it was going crazy. And I think people picked this one up, and I don't want to go too much into it because I'm going to be making mention of this other book later, but it was being treated like it was the next this book that I'm going to talk about later. And it feels like it was planned to be 6, and then like it sold so much. It's like,
she's like, sure,
keep this rolling.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that.
Because like at the end of the first arc, there's a reveal that you probably could have held on to for 3 arcs, right? And so it kind of just,
I agree.
Which is an unfortunate part of, but the industry, it's kind of neat how you can do these arcs or do like a 5-book thing and get people in and out.
It's so hard to have a success. And so
Yes.
I guess you want to hold on to it. And I don't blame it, but it also speaks to how strong that first arc was that I'm still interested. Yeah.
No, absolutely.
But I do agree.
But like, again, that is not detracting from anything. And I love the cast of characters.
Oh, her 2 companions.
Yep.
Yeah. Especially the metal rocker. I mean, it's great.
Like basically Jareth from Labyrinth is kind of the look and feel.
I mean, if you can rock the hair,
yeah, it's awesome.
Why not?
So no, it's a great book, and it's a lot of fun. I feel like, I mean, we'll see. I don't know if it's announced that it's done, but like I don't think we've seen anything since, like you said, like November or something.
Maybe the 3rd trade will be it. Who knows?
15 comes out. No, 15 was November 29th. So,
oh wow,
I think so. I think that 3rd one is probably it. Might be it.
Well,
but either way, so. With mine, number 10,
yes.
I'm actually going to go with a licensed property, which I feel like they do. I wanted to mention this. You'd mentioned Power Rangers before, but they do they've picked up a few of the licensed stuff. Yep. So like Firefly is one of their licensed properties.
Buffy.
Dune.
Oh, that's right.
House of Harkonnen and stuff like that's going on now. Like, so they've done a bunch of those. But my, and it's because I'm so wrapped up in it. Like, did you like The Expanse? Did you watch The Expanse? Did you read The
so
Expanse?
I've only got to see the first season, and it was terrific.
It is. Okay.
I wish I could get to the rest.
No, it's cool. I mean, for as much as you read, I don't know how you've watched anything. So so anyway, Expanse is one of my favorite shows, and their Expanse books, Boom has done. Like, there's one ongoing right now, Dragon Tooth, and that one was actually, it was, I think, possibly their most successful Kickstarter that they actually performed for Dragon Tooth to get it going.
Yeah, I did remember seeing that.
And they did like the fancy like hardcover versions and things like that they're working towards. But they've been releasing it, it's going to be 12 issues. So this stuff takes place after season 5 when the show's done. And I love it when they, like what they did with Buffy season 8, right? When Dark Horse picked it up and it's kind of like, oh, well, the story doesn't end there. Here we keep going. Mm-hmm. That's what Dragon Tooth is as far as Expanse. But then they also, before this, it was kind of cool because they were releasing these books and it would like bridge the gap between seasons when you were waiting. And it's like, well, this is what these people have been doing. So there had to be coordination there as far as like, there's no overlap in the show, but it has to make sense with the show.
Right.
Where like showrunners and things like that, there was that going on. So I personally like stuff like that for the properties where...
Sounds like the early EU Star Wars stuff, which only widens and enhances the stories.
But they don't go back and just completely ignore it and say, just kidding. That's the difference there.
Yeah. Well, if in like 30 years The Expanse gets bought and then they make it terrible, but hopefully not.
So, yeah, basically The Expanse books were my number 10, I have to say, because I love that world. I love living in it, and I've had a great time reading them.
That's great.
Yeah.
No, I really do want to finish those and get into that whole world. But,
I think you'd like it because
I got a lot of lists I'm working down, so every day we cross a little bit more off.
It's another thing. It got me in the same way that Battlestar did, in the way that, like, the flight, the way that the flight is portrayed as far as like realistic. It's like, how everything like space battles were always like they were as if there was gravity, and then all of a sudden there's like, well, it wouldn't actually work like this. And you watch them like shift and pivot.
Anytime that like there's some like actual so much thought given to it. Remember at the end of Rise of Skywalker where the Star Destroyers couldn't take off because the nav was out, so none of them knew how to go up.
Because the concept of an internet eluded them, because you have to have a single point of failure.
The concept of gravity eluded them. Jesus. So my number 9 is actually a series that came back this year after a 6-year hiatus or something like that. And it was so welcome. And another one where I don't think that he had this planned for more than 6 or 12 issues to begin with, and it's just kept going and going because the world is so rich. And it's Wild's End by Dan Abnett, the great Dan Abnett, and art by I.N.J. Colbard. And it came back for its 4th series this year. Dan Abnett is one of the great sci-fi authors. He's done all the Warhammer books. He's widened and enriched that story so much. He's written our beloved Guardians of the Galaxy
run,
and some of the Annihilation stuff. And right now he's doing Vampirella and the Superpowers. I mean, the guy has range, and everything he does is solid. Everything he does is quality. But this right here, this is about a small British village full of animals, and it's invaded by aliens, and they look very much like the H.G. Wells tripod aliens, but if the tripods were streetlights. And these, it's vicious. I mean, it is a violent book. It is a very, very sad book. You get to know these characters very well, even though they're, again, animals with talking bubbles above them, and that's what this is. But it's all very British, which is excellent in this case. And the first few were, in the village. Some took to the woods, and they had to try to regroup. There are bands that are still alive that are trying to fight back, and they're so isolated they don't know how like widespread this is, so they don't know what's going on. And they came back this year, and they were on the people that were out to sea doing the fishing. They came back and like, whoa, we didn't even know this was going on. So now they have to do their part to fight. Like, all right, who is still there? Who's taken over? Who isn't? What people's family are taking, whatnot. And then like if you come back to the mainland. And you're like, I hope everything's okay. And then you find out, oh, not only is everything not okay, but aliens have taken over my family. So like well, you need to stay and help us fight. Like, I don't know how to deal with this right now. I'm not equipped to deal with losing my family and fighting aliens at the same time. It's hard enough paying my bills. That's what Wild's End is, but it's also, after saying all that, it's just a lot of fun. It's a great book. And finally, they're coming out with a trade paperback edition of all 4 volumes, so you can get the whole story. And I do hope at the end of this, he leaves the door open that he writes more, because it's such a fun world to be in.
Because I saw this, recently. So I didn't start at the beginning. So that's been kind of like so I guess for the people out there, if you didn't start 6 years ago, and each of these arcs, do you feel like you're missing out on anything if like we were to start right now with them?
No. This one especially, like you can jump right back in now. Your pleasure will be more if you have read everything, but you don't have to. Like, all that'll do is add to it. It's a lot like Hickman's Ultimate Invasion, where if you read his Avengers run and then his Secret Wars, you're like, oh, well, but you don't have to. You could just read his Ultimate Invasion and get a bunch out of that too. It's great storytellers can do that.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. Whereas, J.J. Abrams, it's like they're on the wings. What do we do? Tip the wings. But that's too much above. Such a hack writer. But that is my number 9, and I would love to hear yours.
Mine is We Only Find Them When They're Dead.
Yes.
So
you got me to read this year, and it was a pleasure.
It is not. The reason where it is where it is okay. Sorry, Al Ewing and Simon DeMeo on art. It is an absolute pleasure to look at. Like, I love his art style anyway. And then
and those colors, man.
Yeah, the colors pop. It's a book that doesn't look like any other book. It's very immediately you're like, oh wow, this is different. And the whole concept behind it, and I hate saying this, but it's one of those where I loved the first arc, and then there was like a time jump period, and it kind of didn't end up being as great at the end as I feel like it could have been. It just lost a little bit of something. However, it is my number 9. It's not like it's bad. It's fantastic. But basically, the whole premise is it's in the future, and there's like these celestial beings, and there's like this ship and this crew, and they go out and basically just like they're salvagers of these celestial bodies,
like dead gods. It's such a said that it's such a Kirby idea.
Yes,
such a
very much so.
Just floating, and they only find the gods when they're dead. And why? Why should that be?
Right, and then like the captain is basically like he's out looking like to find a live one. Right. Mm-hmm. And that's the premise of it. But how many issues did it end up going? Was it 15, 18?
No, I thought it hit 20. I could be wrong though. I read it in that beautiful hardcover that came out.
Sure, but
those colors in it too. That was like something Lovecraft would have described. Those pages after page of those.
For
colors.
The people to relate, what was he did all of the work in Gotham, the actual Gotham book that came out around the Futures. The DC
Futures End?
The Futures End stuff. Like Gotham started there. He did all the interiors on there too, and then he's been doing the Brave and Bold covers.
I think he did the art for Die by Kieran Gillen, but I could be wrong. But that's what it reminded me of.
Yes, but he's got a sense. There's a sense of color there, like the Ward, like Christian Ward's sense of color, where it's kind of like very vivid and very
and all of them.
Right,
all of them,
all of the colors
will make it onto the page at some point. So yeah, even if you don't, if you're not taking with the story, you'll be taking with the art. The story is good. I mean,
Al Ewing can write a story, man. It's
I had
great.
a great time reading it. It's a good pick.
All right, thank you. Number 8 for you.
Number 8. Well, I mean, people who've listened to the show for years know that I like to have fun when I read. Mm-hmm. I don't want it to be all serious. But so my number 8 is a book called I'm Still Alive. Mm-hmm. By Robert Saviano, and this is he's an Italian journalist who uncovered the did a deep dive of the Sicilian mafia in Italy, and it was so close to home that there was a death threat, a hit put out on him, and he had to go into hiding. And this is about his year or two. Well, no, his whole life since then. I take that back. It's been 15 some years since the book came out, and he's been in hiding ever since. And it's about the isolation, solitude, what did I do the right thing? Like, was it worth all of this? And what's it like living under the threat of death? It was if anybody was a cinephile at the time, Matteo Garrone, I think, who never made a decent movie, I think, before since made a film out of that book called Gomorrah, the expose that he wrote, and it was fantastic. Came out in 2008. It was absolutely great. So if you ask me, like, I'm sorry that this guy had to be in, it has to be in self-isolation for the last 15, 16 years, but boy, did we get a great movie out of it. So I think it was worth it, to me. But it's called I'm Still Alive. It's one slim volume. It just came out last year or the year before, and if you get a chance, I would absolutely read it.
So is it like
He wrote it. Like,
okay, the
yeah,
same. Okay,
He wrote it. He didn't illustrate it. I don't have the illustrator in front of me. But it was like I remember hearing about this guy because I remember like it was in the news in the aughts, especially when that movie came out, and I was like, oh man, that sucks for him. I actually thought that he'd been killed, and then this comic came out, and I was like, oh, not only is he alive, but he's writing comics. That would be so much better than dying.
absolutely.
Yeah, living and writing comics, like those two things combined.
Let me ask you then, as
Two
a
of my
follow-up
favorite
to that.
things. Okay, go on.
Why shift over to a comic medium for that? I mean, after the fact, like after everything else, like I'm asking you specifically. This is just out of my curiosity. Like, why do you think it ends? Why do you think that some of these things end up in comics after the story's been told? And
That is a good question. I wonder. I don't know. I can't remember if he addresses it or not. For me, my thinking on it is one: if the last thing you did was a work of nonfiction prose that almost got you here where you're at, why not? Like, oh, I want to tell my story, but maybe I'm a little bitter on that medium. Maybe I can switch over to this. Maybe he just wanted to try his hand and see if he could do it,
Sure.
Or maybe you never know.
Different audience or something.
Like when you find out that like Eazy-E was a huge comic book fan. Maybe he just was a comic book fan. He's like,
Sure.
you know what? Now's the time. So I don't know. There's a multitude of reasons. I can't explain reasonings for most of what I do in a given day, and it never produces a book this good. So who's to say?
That's cool though. I mean, I like it. I guess I'm just always honored when people choose the medium
Absolutely. And treat it
with respect.
with respect, like the same level of art as any other one. I'll tell you what. You know what the comic medium has never done? Produced a Rise of Skywalker.
It has to have at some point.
I don't know. I don't know if it's ever done anything that bad.
That's got to be a topic. We got to do that sometime.
We could. Yeah.
We explore and try to find the Rise of Skywalker.
Man,
equivalent.
I'm gonna have to read so many Mark Millar books now.
Oh man.
Oh well, but that's my number 8. I'm Still Alive by Robert Saviano, and go see Gamora. Make it a date night.
For sure.
Rent it. Show your sweetheart.
It sounds like it would be fantastic date material. All right. My number 8. Is that where we're at?
We're at 8.
All right. I'm going to go with Proctor Valley Road. That's a Grant Morrison book.
The Mad Scotsman himself.
For sure. So I'm sorry. It was co-duty. So Grant Morrison and Alex Child. Artist is Naomi Franquez. I was just talking to you about it. I don't think this is one that you've read, but it's a lot of fun. And definitely one of the more accessible Grant Morrison books. Like it's pretty straightforward, right? It's like 4 kids. They put together like this spook tour thing that they're doing just to like basically to get money. Like they're just trying to go viral and make money to go to like this concert on, Proctor Valley Road, which is a famous like haunted road. And in the process, they find out that it's not just a story, and they're like fighting monsters and stuff like that. And it's very, I remember it got a lot of, obviously he had done Klaus and stuff, so it's not like he had never been to Boom or done anything like that. But there was a lot of excitement around it, and it was kind of a horror thing, which I had never really done any or associated Grant Morrison really with just straight up horror books. So
No.
it was a lot of fun.
Come around to the idea that Grant Morrison can do anything.
And it's like the whole, it's its whole genre, right? It's like 4 friends and there's monsters and, they got a band together but this takes place like in the 70s of America as well, I guess. So that's relevant.
So it sounds like Stranger Things, but in the 70s and good.
Yeah, I'd say so. I don't have a problem with Stranger Things, but I guess it was more interesting for me because I lived in the 80s, so I don't need the nostalgia. With the 70s, I'm learning. With the 80s, I'm just reliving.
Yeah. Okay.
So, it's fun.
I'm going to pick it up because it does sound good, and I've not read it. So my number 7 is a fun one, I think, and a crowd pleaser. It is Irredeemable
Shit.
by Mark Waid with art by Peter Krause.
Simon Ass. I have not read this.
Oh boy, this is a absolutely terrific book. Take a shot. This is a story. He started this in 2009. It went till 2012. 37 issues, and for an independent creator-owned book, that's a miracle in itself. But he's Mark Waid, man. He puts it down. In the story, the Plutonian is essentially a Superman, and he breaks bad, and he starts all of a sudden using his power to kill. Sound familiar, everybody? Mm-hmm. And now the other heroes have to figure out how to stop him. And the other heroes in this, they have a just like in Invincible, and then Marvel and my beloved DC, they have their lateral version of the Justice League. It's called the Paradigm, and there are such characters. The main gal, her name is Bette Noir, and that right there it's already terrific. Side note: anybody listening at home, if you ever have a chance, there's a great Jean Renoir film starring Jean Gabon called Bette Noir. Go watch it. Make it the second. If she loved Gamora, she's gonna love a black and white French. It is. Jean Renoir is one of the great French filmmakers. Matter of fact, you know what? I'm gonna go Jean Renoir, and this is true. His father is Pierre Renoir, the Impressionist artist. But anyway, and also there's Cubit, and there's others, and through 37 issues, it does this. It's just now. I want to be upfront here. I don't like postmodern takes on superheroes. I think you
like them being heroes.
Yes. At this point, it's regressive. Alan Moore did it. He did it perfectly. He showed us exactly right with The Watchmen, and he did it perfectly. And there's no we get it. And at this point, it just seems lazy. At this point, it seems like zombie fiction. Like, I don't have any talent. What should I do? Write a zombie book. Oh, okay. But here, when it's done this well, it's like it has to just not only overcome that, but then win me over, and then okay, now I am down. I am with this, and this book does it. Invincible did it, but it took. I mean, that's 144 issues, and it took me a while. It took me about a third of the way through that series before I was like, I'm committed. Okay, I'm having enough fun.
Yeah.
But this does a little bit better. It was so successful that it actually spawned a spin-off / companion book called Incorruptible. So if Irredeemable is about a superhero who breaks bad, Incorruptible is about his arch nemesis Max Damage turning good, and about his journey towards being a good person and what that takes. And
that's awesome.
It was so great. It was so terrific. And they go so well together, and they're so much fun.
Well, and there's a level of trust there with Mark Waid that he's going to do it the right way.
It's Mark, and that's another thing. Like with Astro City was the same thing. Astro City was a not sort of a postmodern take on superheroes, and it was Kurt Busiek. So it's like I'm in the hands of somebody who likes characters. I don't like, especially we've talked about this in.
Well, I think what you're trying to say too. I mean, it's not that you dislike that. It's that Mark Waid loves superheroes.
Yeah.
So it's just him telling a story. It's not an actual hatred.
If you love it,
infiltrating the medium to be like.
But so often it is used. It is used for that's what I think Mark Millar does a lot. I just don't like it. A small example, like in a Marvel movie, like say Black Widow, where she lands and then Yelena points out how silly that is.
We've talked about
dumb.
this.
She lands like a superhero, and it's been great for 10 years. And you pointing it out, sure, the ironic douchebags in the audience are going to have something to grin at and pat themselves on the back for. But it's what? Who is that for? Or when they laugh in No Way Home, and otherwise terrific, perfect film when they make fun of Otto Octavius' name. Who is that for? Who's that besides some self-satisfied jerk in the audience? So. When comics do it, it's even more no. This is where we live, man. Don't do that. We love these characters. I love Superman. I love Batman. I love when they I want to see him save a cat out of a tree.
Well, we kind of touched on it last week with Batman, with the litmus test on you're either okay with him falling from space or you're not, and that's kind of the same thing we're talking about. It's I'm not.
And it was told in earnest, and it was great.
Right. I'm not. I mean, I'm the same kid that grew up loving NASA and actual realistic things about space and astrophysics and stuff. However, I'm also the person that thinks that Batman can do absolutely anything and Superman can do absolutely anything. So I'm fine if you throw that at me.
Because the comics have, especially superhero comics, like Irredeemable does. They establish their own rules and they follow them. You can do whatever you want as long as you follow your own rules. I'm going to go off a weird tangent. Pacific Rim. Pacific Rim is a preposterous film.
Yep.
It is ridiculous, and it is also terrific.
It's amazing.
Because in those first 10 minutes, they tell you the rules of this movie. These are the rules of the universe that we are creating, and they follow those rules. Irredeemable does that. DC Comics does that. Marvel Comics does that. The great ones do. They can be as preposterous as they want as long as they make internal sense, as long as they are in earnest, and as long as they tell a great story. And that is why I like Irredeemable.
It's good. That's one you've talked to me about it before, and I've slept on it. I mean, I can't.
No worries. I mean, life's long, and not everybody's read everything. I haven't read Proctor Valley.
It's I'm excited about that one though because I love Mark Waid.
Oh, it's just another Mark Waid banger. That's my 7, and I would love to hear your 7.
So 7 for me is a book that came out a few years ago called Basilisk.
Went right in. I forgot all about Basilisk.
Yeah, Basilisk. And the thing that really struck me at first, and I'm going to pull, it's a Cullen Bunn book.
Love it.
And then artist, I'll have to look up. I'm not prepared on that one, but I feel like there was actual multiple artists because do you remember in those books at the beginning they had like the first few pages where the art style was completely different and it showed the 5 senses before, like when they were coming down from the mountain and things like that, and then it switched over to the actual.
Right. Very much a
book.
choice.
Yes, very much a choice. And I just thought that was such an interesting thing in a way of showing it. But to get into like the nuts and bolts of it, Basilisk is basically, I kind of just touched on it, where they're like these 5 super powered beings that in each one like represents the different senses. And basically they just use it to destroy like humanity. So like the main one has like this, from a design perspective, it was very striking. Like they had like the veil over
Very
her
much
face.
so.
But because basically without that, like if she raises the veil, like just looking out at things would like obliterate.
Yeah.
Like they'd start to melt and whatever else. And there was obviously one for like taste, which was a playful way as far as like destroying people through that method, and then sound and whatever else. So basically, without getting too much into it, the one that has the power of the sight one has like a change of heart more or less and decides that, maybe tormenting humanity isn't the path that she wants to go down. And
Agree to disagree, but it worked in the story.
sure. But that's more or less the story is not, I don't want to say the redemption, but more or less the other 4 are like tracking her down because she's kind of escaped from the group and doesn't want to be any part of that anymore. But visually it was very cool. And that was one of those concepts where I was like, it's fun where you like, it's kind of take the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse type of thing, but instead you just apply it to the 5 senses. And then the abilities themselves were really cool. And
this is a book I remember 4 or 5 months ago. I picked it up because I was like, I see it all the time. It's bad. It's I see that the name is very whatever, and it's Cullen Bunn. So I just read the first issue, and then I didn't realize that it was so close to an ending, a definitive ending.
Yeah.
And then I just couldn't stop reading it. I thought it was terrific. Also, Cullen Bunn. It was the Danny Luckert art.
Yeah.
Regression.
There you go.
The Image book by Cullen Bunn. So it all comes full circle. We want to give you guys a good show, folks.
The Chimera is what they call themselves as far as being the collective name of them. And then Jonas Scharf is the artist on that one. I just want to make sure I looked
Scharf.
So it was solicited like for fans of like supernatural horror stuff, like Philadelphia and Stillwater
And Regression.
and Regression.
He does a
But
good job.
I feel like I like Philadelphia, but it isn't my absolute favorite. Like it's cool how it uses like it goes. I'm not going to go into it that much. This is an Image book, but
I could, but no, we won't.
and Stillwater's another Image book. I think that it's a terrible comparison as far as the way between those books, but yes, I guess those are all technically horror.
It's a wide and varied genre.
So anyway, yes, Regan is the name of the main one also, as far as the one that with the gift of sight. So basically she escaped and they're coming looking for her, and the fun's in the journey. It's cool in the way that the visual, the style is very striking. And
No, Basilisk was a great book, and like there are 3 trades, and that encompasses the entire story. I would suggest that to anybody. That's a fun book. I don't think I've ever read a Cullen Bunn book that I didn't think was at least okay, which is saying something for a guy that writes, I think, 38 books a month.
Yeah,
He is very prolific. Nothing of not prolific.
insane amount. But yeah, Basilisk is where I'd put
So
my number.
the fun and the journey really is good for my number 6. We talked last week about the great genre unto its own that is mouse fiction.
Yeah.
And this is our first Archaea title, Mouse Guard.
Yep.
Written and drawn by David Peterson. It's just a fantasy book about mice, have to protect their kingdom. You know, they're small, they're helpless, and the mouse guard ferries and protects the regular mice from one place to another. They protect the realm. It's very you can jump in at any time. You can read any issue. The formatting is they're essentially square pages, but it's comic in every sense of the word. It's still unfinished. It's one of the great unfinished comics. And there's not much to explain the plot. It's a terrific. You know what, people at home, you've had a long week. Take 2 shots. Fantasy book with mice with sword and shields, and they display valor, they display cowardice, they display all that you'd want from a great.
What's the original medium on this? I feel like this didn't start in comics.
I think it did. They just
Really?
came out. They came out in the. I don't think they came out in the hardcovers, but I think they came out originally in the trades, or it might have been. No, it was way before webcomics, if I'm not
Because
mistaken.
what's wild is there's an entire
Because right now it's only 3 or 4 hardcovers. Very slim,
DIY
take everything.
like, community. They play Dungeons and Dragons, but Mouse Guard. So it's like Mouse Guard
Oh, the tabletop
campaigns.
games are
yeah,
absolutely
tabletop.
they are great. I would love to do that at some point. It's interesting. Mouse Guard. I came to my favorite living not out of comics author, Michael Chabon, talked about Mouse Guard. I can't like so many. I don't know. He did an interview 20 years ago, and he said it was one of the great unfinished series. And I was like, well, he wrote Amazing Adventures of Cavalier Clay. I'm gonna find this. And at that point, it was harder to find. Like now, you can just order it from Peterson's website. But it's and not only that, but like there's not that much of it. It's built its reputation on just being what is there is so good. It's so quality. It's just a great rousing adventure story. With the guys they have the courage and the heart of a giant and these little mouse heroes. So if anybody wants to go right to David Peterson's site, get Mouse Guard, and you'll just it's just you know what, it is whimsical as hell.
Yeah, that's what I've actually looked into that, but I actually arrived at it through the Dungeons and Dragons community as far as putting together that campaign. I'm
Whatever
like,
gets
oh,
the
that's
message
cool.
out there, like that's great, and it works in that medium, in that world so well too.
For sure.
You're already there. But that's my number 6, and I couldn't be happier about it.
All right. My number 6, I'm kind of cheating by putting 2 books together, which are Eat the Rich and Know Your Station.
They're great companion pieces.
So Eat the Rich and Know Your Station are both written by, I need to look this one up actually, because it's the same person that wrote both books with different artists on each one respectively.
So I have all mine written down.
Yeah, you were much better prepared for this. So it's Sarah Gailey that wrote both of them.
Oh.
So Eat the Rich, it made a huge impact on me, and I wasn't expecting this. It had some striking covers. The very first thing that caught my attention when it was out was, there was a Jenny Friesen cover. It was that cool
I've got it.
design. Yeah. So I look into it there, and I start reading it, and it was. I read this one as it came out. I didn't even do it collected afterwards, and it was painful waiting because it was already a. How do I describe this? The feeling. It's it's an awkward book to read.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's you're getting some insight into some certain lifestyle or a world.
Doesn't care if you feel good or not.
It does not care if you feel good or not. Exactly. So Eat the Rich is basically, it starts off with this girl who feels, obviously she feels self-conscious for some reason, and then you find out, and the art plays a big part in this too, because her boyfriend, you could tell, has the haircut, and you could tell he's from money, and they're on their way, and she's really nervous because she's meeting the parents, and then she shows up, and everything's her feeling about self-conscious, oh, should I wear this? Should I do this? What do rich people do? Or is this going to make me stick out? Because she really wants to fit in.
Right.
Everybody, the way everybody kind of feels. It's oh, all of our goal obviously is to become rich and live like this. And, this is they live in the Hamptons,
Yeah,
So,
and there's that tendency of poor people who've been poor all their life who view the rich as another on another planet, and it's
And this is very fun because it is an emphasis on, yes, they do live on another planet. This is absolutely insane stuff. Like, who would do this? Why would you do this? Like, all kinds of crazy stuff ensue in this book. And like, you have some incredible character moments where it's like there's a caretaker for the child. I think her name is Petal, if I remember. Like, she becomes like, I don't want to say friends with, because nobody's actually friends in this community. It's just it's incredibly awkward feeling the whole way through. Called Eat the Rich. That plays somewhat into it, obviously, and it's a play on words. But Eat the Rich is a fantastic book. It's 5 issues. You can get in and out. The other one I was talking about is that's a kind of a companion piece. So Know Your Station is about, like, you know, there's the wealthiest people in the solar system, super rich, like the 1%ers, whatever else. But they leave on this private, you know, plane in the sanctuary in space, and they left the rest of us to die. But what ends up happening is there's like a murderer on the loose that's going after those people. So it's kind of like so it's like both of these books are like, fuck you, rich people, more or less.
We definitely have a theme this week. I think Animal Pound and Orwell was a great way to open this up.
Yes. So I mean, but they're.
You know who's going to love this episode?
Who?
The Ghost of John Steinbeck. I know he listens.
They're fun books, though. I mean, again, I think you and I both have an appreciation for Mark Russell as well, because I don't feel like
I sure do.
These are intelligent ways of telling these stories, and it's like, if you read it as it is, I don't care if the message is like. I'm not even saying that I disagree with these messages as far as like.
No, if anybody wants to talk about the oncoming revolution, you come into the shop, ask for Shane.
I think they're fun themes to talk about, and putting them in space with a murderer chasing them.
It is weirdly like ripe, fertile ground for storytelling.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I love, like, when I was reading, I love feeling uncomfortable. I don't like feeling scared. Like, if that makes any sense. So, like, I'm not a huge like horror fan, because jump scares, all they do is make me angry.
That's cheap.
Like, I instantly just get angry. Like, it's like some visceral.
It's cheap. It's
response. But Eat the Rich and Know Your Station made me feel uncomfortable, because they show people acting in a way that, at least with the way I was raised and the people that I know, it would be completely unacceptable. And there's a completely different class of people that live a completely different way that is like, nobody would condone that behavior at all whatsoever, except for each other, but only because they're covering their own ass. Yeah, and it's crazy. It's awesome.
I've got literature on this I can give you. I've got plenty of pamphlets.
I'm not.
You can come to the meeting later. But I agree. There's a movie came out in 2019 with Samara Weaving called Ready or Not, which could almost be an adaptation of Eat the Rich. It's so much fun, and it's like exactly everything you described, and it's terrific, because Eat the Rich is fun.
It is fun.
And then there's a movie, I don't know if you ever saw it, called Elysium by Neil Blomkamp.
Yes. Yep.
A terrific,
Matt Damon, right?
Yes.
Yep.
And Jodie Foster. It was such a great idea. It was not executed very well, but it was such a great idea, and that reminds me of Know Your Station very much.
Yes.
So.
Yep.
But no, those are 2 great picks. Boom was on their game.
Yep.
Well, that makes it. Now we're down to the top 5.
Top 5.
And as always, this is when we actually get to the good books.
These other ones were terrible.
Just garbage. But my number 5 is by one of my favorite creators, and I don't think he gets his due. Matt Kindt, and it is Grass Kings. Art is by Tyler Jenkins. This is one of his many collaborations with Tyler Jenkins. Matt Kindt is also famous for, he either does his own art, he collaborates with his best friend in the industry, Jeff Lemire, the great Jeff Lemire, or Tyler Jenkins. Grass Kings is about this small, weird community. It's a community of poor people living in a trailer park. And there's this family, 3 brothers, and they're the Grass Kings. And it is about they tell this like epic folklore about this community, and they make it seem like these are legends, like blah blah blah. But it is just a bunch of people in a trailer. Like, that's like living in this community, having that same the regular problems of that. A woman who has probably a very nefarious, dark past comes into the community, into the realm, and it's like, this is going to be trouble. She's going to bring in the cops. Our jurisdiction here is, I mean, our land claim is maybe shakier than one would like, but the eldest brother, who is the most cautious, accepts her, and he's like, I want to help her, and that may or may not cause a rupture, or may or may not cause huge problems to the realm. But it's just so interesting. It's a story very much about how we tell stories, we make up our own story. Most people's version of their own life has been, it's been boiled in memory. It's been boiled by their own perspective, everybody's the hero in their own story. Nobody's the bad guy. And what if somebody wrote that down? And what if all you've ever done is live in a trailer park? Like, he's like, but make it epic. And that's what Grass Kings does. The Tyler Jenkins art serves it so well. And it's a story that's like, I've never read anything like that. Because when I was like, Grass Kings, this about a trailer, like, what? And then you realize, like, oh, I see what they're doing.
Right.
But they tell a terrific story. And Matt Kent, who of course wrote Mind Management and Department H and all these great, spy, mystery, Three Sisters, mystery stories, he brings that intrigue to Grass Kings. And so it moves. And it's a great run. If you can get there are 3 hardcovers that collect the entire, it only went 15 issues. And it was terrific from beginning to end. And I suggest anybody who likes comics and wants to get into another creator that does great work that they may not be too familiar with, Matt Kent. He is the one that co-wrote wink, wink, Berserker. With Keanu. And hey, however, I like Keanu, even if I don't like John Wick. He is he's a true fan. He didn't get just anybody.
Right.
He went to Matt Kent.
Yep.
And Matt Kent, however you have to raise your Q level, you do it, buddy.
Yeah.
But Grass Kings number 5, and I stand by it. It's great.
All right. That brings me to my number 5, which I would have to say is The Many Deaths of Layla Starr.
Boy, what a life changer.
It's a crazy book as far as like, I like Ram because, he asks those questions and he's got some answers. It's neat. So the premise behind it, if you guys aren't familiar with Many Lives and Deaths, are Layla Starr is the main character, but it's actually basically the goddess of death. And she's taken to a place in time where humanity is on the verge of finding immortality, like a way of, discovering not dying. And it's kind of like her struggle and her turmoil between like, that's her whole purpose. She's there in the same time as like the person who's going to discover how humanity will find immortality. And it's kind of her like knocking around in Mumbai, isn't it?
Right.
Hanging out and kind of her way with dealing with it. And I guess I'm kind of a sucker for this because it feels like, I don't know. I don't want to say it's actually anything like this really, but like Sandman, Death, like this is the same type of like, there's like that parallel there.
Right.
Where it's the way that it's portrayed, where it's like, this is the reason why you die is because this person
It's something that's traded. It's traded with weight and levity at the same time, and that is a hard juggling act.
But it's Ram V, and the artist is Philippe Andrade, and it is.
Are they doing Rare Flavors too? Is that the same?
Yes, it's the same team. I was going to say that. So Rare Flavors, and these aren't like. If you're reading Detective and you read Ram V, or if you read his recent run on Swamp Thing, which I will mention was only supposed to be 8 issues that turned into 16 because he kills it.
Yeah.
Fantastic living in that world, and he can write a superhero book. But his books that he writes for his creator-owned, like These Savage Shores, Rare Flavors,
Blue and Green, or something like that.
Yep. Yeah. They're very contemplative books, and this one more. I mean, this is his book contemplating about.
If you ever hear him speak, he's so thoughtful and
philosophical.
he's so charming. Yeah. But he also brings that he's got a much more broader canvas for his thought system, his belief system. So like the Wheel of Karma gets worked.
Yes.
It's way more than just a Western take on these things.
Which I guess I find that interesting. That in of itself is very interesting. It's cool exposure if you're just a comic guy.
Yeah.
To get some of those ideas in without reading the real literature.
Yeah, Layla Starr was revelatory.
Yes, I mean, I don't want to like
and making death Death avatar so relatable, so likable.
20-something-year-old
absolutely helped.
It's fun. I don't want to. This is the hard part I have with these lists too, and I'm not very good at it. Is that I don't want to talk about the entire story because the fun part is experiencing it. I mean, it's
so we're just putting people on.
You have to like get in there and do the work. But Layla Starr, it's 5 issues. Like it'll take you maybe an afternoon if you read slowly. It is a fantastic book.
And then if you love it, which I know you will, and you're like, man, I loved it, but I wish he'd write a book about gods and delicious cuisine.
Yes.
Well, guess what?
You're in luck.
Lucky day.
Yeah, Rare Flavor has got the same type of thing where it is so strange when you like get into that book. It's like this guy is like talking to this guy. He's like, I want you to film a documentary, and he's like the whole book is about that. And you're like, what is going on here?
But he is a god. Like he establishes that he's a god. But I want this guy.
but I want this normal guy to film this documentary that I'm doing about this perfect tea.
Yeah.
It's like,
and it's punctuated with great dishes for great Indian dishes. Yeah, and
it goes
all
through like
works.
the scenes, like the panels and stuff. It like shows like the perfect timing for like it has to be heated here, and it's just fun.
And it relates
idea.
though to the story. Like it's Ram is one to watch long term for the stuff he's done. It's like Tom King, where the amount of work he does is prolific, but also like the quality of it.
But he's also bringing those same ideas to Batman, and these are fun books to read if you like that style of Ram without the shackles of Batman. Not to say that there are any, but I mean,
right. But where I say like that, Colin Bunn writes a lot, and everything is at least okay to great. Everything that Ram has written is like that's at least great to great. Like he doesn't slip.
Absolutely,
his ideas are so good.
And that brings me to. Actually, you go ahead and go, and I'm going to look up. There's one that's on Final Order Cutoff today that I was super pumped about. I read the solicitation. I'm just going to pull up the solicitation so I can read it to people because I want to give a shout out to Ram and get people on it. So.
Oh well, I'll do my 4 then.
Sure.
Which it just worked out this way, but it is by Matt Kent and Tyler Jenkins, and it is one of my favorite discoveries of the last few years. It's a book called Black Badge. It's Boy Scout troops. Competing Boy Scout troops who are also killers, and they go out, blah blah blah. The Black Badge Squad, they are the elite killers. They are the assassins. And I remember reading it, and I was like, this is what Deadly Class was missing. These are kids who kill each other, but I don't know. It was less mean. They kill adults, which helps. They get their targets and whatever, and you have the moral implications of like, is making child soldiers good or bad? You can quote me. It's bad.
It's bad.
You can quote me. But it's also like the whole like fun of having like an assassin book, and here they're Boy Scouts. it's the whole, and again, the guy that writes he writes great intrigue, he writes great spy stuff, he writes great adventure stories. So imagine a team of an elite squad of killer Boy Scouts in the woods with their target, and they have to question whether or not what they're doing is, are we working for the right guys? Are we the good guys? And that's what Black Badge, like, that's succinct. Again, it's I think it's only 15 issues or less, and it's one it's absolutely worth tracking down, reading the entire thing in a few hours, and just having a great time. That's Black Badge. It's number 3. The great ones, I'm not going to give anything away, but it's.
He's got a knack for that though too, because he did Fear Case as well, right? That was him.
Yes.
That's another one that's kind of like that gritty. It's good stuff. Yeah.
I just love Matt Kent. And we're gonna do an episode of this pretty soon. But Matt Kent, I discovered during the Valiant
years,
Valiant re-release or the reboot in 2012, and I've just been on. I've found everything he's written since. Besides Berserker, ironically enough, I didn't really care for it, but yeah. But that's my number 4.
That one feels. It's not even. He couldn't even really save the premise. I mean, we've all seen. We know like Highlander and the rest. I don't want to.
I picture it as Keanu, who is so incredibly likable.
Right.
It's like, I've got an idea for a comic, and he tells you, and it's like, oh, I've heard that 1,000 times. But it's Keanu Reeves. You're gonna be like, oh, great, Keanu. He's like, cool. Let's write it. He's like, sure. It's a great business move for me, and it is.
Well, the book sells, and it's not that it's bad. It's just
bad.
The intrigue isn't there for me personally.
No.
But I did find the book, and the only reason why I'm doing this and I am pushing it is it's a book. The new Ram V book is called One Hand. It's on FOC right now, which is why I'm saying if you guys are interested in checking out a Ram V book,
I didn't know.
And it's coming up. It's a mini series about a detective named Ari Nasser hunting the one hand killer. So it's like him getting into this noir game. And it's called One Hand, number 1. It is on FOC today for release in next month. I just wanted to bring that up because Ram V's been extremely solid. And if you're looking for a book in the future to like something you can hop onto without, have already missed the boat or you're not halfway through a series, that would be a good spot to pick it up.
Good.
Cool.
I did not know that either, so I need to get on that.
Cool.
So then your number 3. Wait, that was my number 4. Your number 4.
My number 4. I've been waffling. I'm gonna have to put it as Alice Ever After / Alice Never After.
What a great book.
A
great book.
I feel like it should be. I mean, I'm gonna count this as my 3 and 4 because I love them equally. I'm sorry, I'm
Alice
cheating.
Ever and Alice Never.
Ever is 3, Never is 4. Like I liked the continuation of it, but it's called Alice Ever After and then Alice Never After. And the premise is it's Alice in Wonderland, which is already a winner for me. I love that stuff.
We love these books. Craig and I have bonded over. We read the books Alice and Through the Looking Glass.
Yep.
Years ago, and so this was a mountain to get over. Then
It was because I was like, I already had the love. It better be impressive. But one of the cool things about it is there's actually Dan Panosian is writing it.
Yes.
It has the voice of Alice in Wonderland. If you know. Like it sounds like the dialogue would be actual dialogue that takes place in Wonderland and then also London at the same time frame. Because
there is a distinction.
There is a distinction there because there's 2 artists. In London, Dan Panosian does the art as well, which I love his artwork. He's a fantastic artist. And then everything is very like London speak. And then in Wonderland, for the spots that take place in Wonderland, it's Giorgio Spalletta. And it is wild. Like I love, like all of the Alice in Wonderland characters are there. So anyway, in the first one, the whole premise of the book is like everything that happened to Alice in Wonderland is real. It's later on in her life, and she's just a wreck because how do you go through that? And like,
and if you are a woman in Victorian era London,
right?
It's like it's Victorian era. It's like she's having nervous
out of her
tempers. She
mind,
must be able to put her in an asylum.
But beyond that, well, I guess if I'm going to talk about both of them,
and they make her second guess, like
yes, they basically kind of give her a lobotomy.
Yeah.
And then in Never After, it becomes really weird because she's in the real world. All the Panosian work is her shitty ass uncle and everything else going, and her cousin that's trying to like get her back into the real world somewhat. So she's completely sunken into like in
she's
Wonderland.
lobotomized. So she's
in Wonderland. It takes a lot of place there, and she's like the new Queen of Hearts and things like that, and everything's just wacky and crazy.
Yes.
But anyway, if you love Alice in Wonderland, it is a fantastic
a couple things it does too, because she's the Queen of Hearts, and they're like, well, you're the queen, you must take a king because you're a woman in this time. Also, they make the Cheshire Cat dangerous, which I really like.
So.
I really like because they were always even the Disney version did a very good job of making. There's an air of like
nobody will like take her serious.
Yeah,
they're like this guy's an asshole, and they're like, oh come on, he's just it's like can't be that bad.
He was right there. I do agree. And Dan Panosian, who does great work, especially with my beloved Red Sonja.
Yep.
And now he's writing that too. This was a great showcase for his writing skills, which I never really associated him with before. But what a great discovery.
I mean, the dialogue is the same as far as like.
Well, Alice Ever After was also one where it's like when it ended, I was like, oh, it could be a stopping point, and then it kept going, and it was so welcome. And again, I don't generally like literary adaptations. I think that's a little bit lazy. Like it was already successful as a book, so I'll adapt it as a comic. But then sometimes like this one, they're telling a different story. Mm-hmm. It's a sequel, and boy, it got over. It definitely did win me over. Like it's not just telling a sequel to Alice in Wonderland,
right?
But a great story.
I mean, it was kind of surprising, like the premise itself, right? Like you read through Alice in Wonderland and the series, and you're like, oh, cool, and you just kind of take for granted. You're like, and then you go back to real life. And you go, what? No, that's not possible.
Yeah.
Like, so it was just like, it's a simple premise, much like, Blackest Night is like, oh yeah, well, of course there's an entire rainbow of rings.
Right. And also the whipsawing of going from Wonderland to a real life.
Yes.
Neither one of them is easy, but man, one's a lot more fun.
In the subtle things like, you give her this food and she's like, I'm not feeling too well. This isn't going to make me like small or big, right? And they're like, no. And then she takes it, and they're all crowding around. And what it did is it turned her into a baby. And so it's like,
right, yeah.
and it's like fun things like
Great
that,
ideas.
right?
Great
Yeah,
ideas.
Great ideas.
I always adored the March Hare. I think it was because of the illustrations in the original edition that I read from the time, and also I love the Mad Hatter, and I love of all characters to make a Batman villain, the great Jervis Tetch as the Mad Hatter. Once we ever do this, I really want to go into what my take on the Mad Hatter. But the Alice in Wonderland, Alice Never After, Alice Ever, they're such good books. I gave them to my sister-in-law. She loves them.
And it's not even like I would even say it's like a licensed book. It's honestly just something that's...
Well, it's in public domain anyway, man.
Sure, but I mean, it doesn't feel like a lot of people...
He had an idea, and a lot of people just, they don't. I think that's why, like Pride and Prejudice versus Zombies, that's not an idea. That's just a hack job.
Right.
And this is like, I have an idea about what we can do with Alice in Wonderland. I think we talked about this, Briar, which took Sleeping Beauty. I wanted it to be that, but it's not there.
Yeah,
here it is. And you can see, like, if there's inspiration, then there's inspiration, and it'll come through, and it does here.
Yep, agreed.
So that brings me to number 3. Speaking of it, so my number 3, it's a comic, began as a web comic called Giant Days, by John Allison, with art by Max Sarin and Lisa Tremaine. We talked about John Allison last week. He was in my honorable mention because this year he wrote The Great British Bump Off, which was a food show / mystery / murder mystery, which is already terrific. Giant Days was a comic that he wrote years ago. Again, it was supposed to be 5 or 6 issues. It's 54 issues right now, and it's about three college gals in modern day Britain. They go to a University of Sheffield. The names are it is Esther de Groot, the goth, Susan Ptolemy, the tomboy, and then Daisy Wooten, the homeschool chick. And she's not weird. I mean, she's a little kooky, but she's not strange.
Sure.
And it's about their adventures. There is murder. There is intrigue, and they also just hang out. It's one of the great hangout books. John Allison, which you'll find, he also wrote a great book, a great comic called Bad Machinery, and then with The Great British Bump Off. It's like he balances murder and crime with the great hangout better than almost anybody outside of Quentin Tarantino. I'll say it. What is Pulp Fiction but a great hangout? What is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood but a great hangout? What is Giant Days but a great hangout? Just friends. Being friends. Sometimes you got to solve a murder mystery, Sometimes one of your friends goes missing, and we got to solve this right now. It's like nothing. Well, no, it's like I hadn't read anything like it, and it was terrific, and it was so popular. Like, it was not available. There were 3 hardcovers that came out from Boombox years ago, and they were out of print, and it was so popular, and the online fervor was such that now they are. I think they brought back not just volumes 1 through 3, but volume 6 of the hardcovers. So you can get almost every issue now, and it's just because people, you enjoy reading them. You feel good when you're done. You just got done hanging with friends, and you can't wait to see them again. That's what Giant Days is.
And it's been widely regarded outside of your list, even Giant Days is on everybody's list. If you ask them, if you say like, oh, top Boom comics, and you look at that, Giant Days is on that list everywhere. So it's definitely worth going.
Quality, and John Allison is a great. If you guys can find it, track down some interviews with him. He's a great listen to. He's a lot of fun.
So that
was my number 3. Well, you had 3, so do you want me to go from 2?
Well, I was going to throw in there. I'll just take the opportunity to throw in an honorable mention, I guess, so it's not completely
Good, because I got one as well.
Cool. I'm going to go with the Buffy stuff on Boom. It hasn't actually. It's not that bad. Like, I think.
Absolutely. Because the first one was his season 8.
The first one,
or his season whatever.
That was Dark Horse immediately following that. Right. But then he actually did write stories leading into Boom. So he actually did write some. But then Jordi Belair took some, and all that. And I just wanted to give a shout out. Yeah, they're good. They're authentic. They handle the universe. And the most recent one that they're going through now is The Last Vampire Slayer, which is derivative of the, I'm not completely caught up either, but it's like Old Man Logan or Old Man Hawkeye or whatever, but like it's like kind of like an Old Man Buffy type deal as far as like the last of the.
Have you seen Sarah Michelle Gellar? That is fine.
No. Sure. I'm not complaining.
I'm not reading the book. I don't know if that's what it is.
No, me either, to be completely honest. As far as like, I think it was like, it came out and I'm like, oh, that's neat. But, she's the last Slayer. I mean, I know she's like, it's about her in her 50s or 60s or whatever, basically still rocking the Slayer deal. So, I mean, it could very well be interesting. We've got some polls and stuff on it. I just haven't had a chance to read every.
It's off of Last Ronin too.
Yes.
Which can be great, because Last Ronin was great. My honorable mention is so I've done all this shitting on literary adaptations, but one of the best versions, it's a boom book. One of the best literary adaptations ever was in a comic, and it was Ryan North's Slaughterhouse 5. And it's because that one, Ryan North is a mad genius. He wrote Unbeatable Squirrel and Fantastic Four, respectively. But Slaughterhouse 5, more than anything, like Vonnegut's book lends itself very much to this medium, because Slaughterhouse 5, if anybody's read it, they take this guy outside of space and time, so it jumps around, and you plug him back in certain instances of his life as it goes, and that's part of the storytelling. And nothing expresses that quite so well, because there was a film that was fine, but outside of the book, nothing serves it so well as this graphic novel, Slaughterhouse 5. Again, I think read all the Vonnegut books; they're great. He was born in Terre Haute, Indiana, by the way. Yep. He's a local boy. But this is one where you could almost, like, if you do have a book report on Slaughterhouse 5, you could do this and get it just as well. So that's my honorable mention. Just want to throw that in because I forgot about Slaughterhouse 5.
Cool.
But anyway, my number 2, by the great Grant Morrison, who we've already mentioned, and beautiful fawn person Dan Mora, Klaus.
There you go.
Or as we all call it, Sexy Santa.
Sexy Santa.
Now, you've all read Grant Morrison. You know this guy's a little out there. Yep. Whether it be Doom Patrol, The Invisibles, which is wonderful, baffling, just bizarre, intriguing, or if you've ever read Final Crisis. I'm gonna.
We've talked about this so many times.
I'm gonna put gun to your sister's head. You tell me what's the plot. You tell me, but it's fantastic.
You can't blame it on, well, it was all spaced out, or whatever. Because once I got the omnibus,
I read the Omni twice, and it's
well,
I enjoyed myself,
confused.
but I don't. Yeah. He can go all over the place, but here he just tells a straight story about Sexy Santa kicking ass. This is a young Kris Kringle and his reindeer. It just begins as one, and there's no plot to describe besides Sexy Santa kicking ass. There's things up north in the North Woods. There are people who would do him harm. There are people who do nature harm, and that's not what Kris Kringle's about. You take a 4th century Greek saint, and you're like, I'm going to tear down these woods. What are you going to do about that? And he's like, well, I guess I'm just going to take care of business. I've got a present for you, or something like that. It would be cool.
I've got a present for you.
There are 3 slim volumes, or one. They just re-released this in one hardcover that has everything. And this right here, this should be a holiday staple for everyone at home. You should be gather around, children. Gather around the hearth, and we're going to tell the story of Sexy Santa.
A companion book to
Silent Night.
Silent Night.
Absolutely. And ever since the word, matter of fact, this could be the prequel. This could be the prequel to Silent Night, because Silent Night deals with, we won't call him sexy, but we'll call him Virile Santa in Silent Night, and that could definitely have come from this Santa Claus, by Grant Morrison and Dan Mora. It's so much fun. It's the most fun on this list, except for my number 1. And if you've not read it before, I'm surprised, because this is it's a fun book. And
cool.
Yeah, I think everybody should read it. I hope he does like an Easter themed book next. Bring the sexy back to Easter, or do a sexy Uncle Sam. Never mind.
I have not.
Craig, I just got an idea for a book.
Do it. You should write it. So, number 2, I haven't read that one either. As far as the Klaus, I didn't even find out about that until we actually started talking about the episode.
You didn't know how sexy Santa was.
I had no idea whatsoever. So, a lot of mine, I stick them together. So, like I've got basically the Slaughterverse as the top of the boom books. That was basically
fantastic.
So House, now Butcher, Book of Butcher, all the extra ancillary books, and then it all started with Something is Killing the Children. But like, I know we had talked about it and you said it wasn't going to make your list. It made mine for sure. Like Something Is Killing the Children. I don't know what it is. And I think it's because I told you I like feeling uncomfortable. I don't like being scared. And this is about as close as being like
Does
actual
come
horror
close,
book
yeah.
does come close.
It
and
is
like
great. It is a great book.
of being, and it's not like, it doesn't do anything mind blowing with themes. It doesn't do anything. It's not really like I don't really think about the book. It's not like it makes me like, oh wow, what would I do in that? It's not that type of book. It's not something like esoteric where it's like way out. It's just like, I really care about the character. Like I love Erica, right?
Yes.
And then I love Jessica.
Love Jessica.
I love Gary. Gary, just the very first thing that Gary shows up, he's just hanging out with the record player. Like, you're like, who are these people? He does a great job as far as making you care about these people and living in that universe. So like the first 15, as far as Archer's Peak saga, like he's become a complete master of pacing.
Yes.
And
which he was not early in his career.
Right.
And now he is.
And it's never more evident than in like World Tree. Like we've said it, we keep going back to it. Like if you read World Tree 1 and you're not like, what the hell is going on? I want to know more. I don't.
You
I don't
probably
know what
read
to
it
tell
backwards.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's something wrong there. But like Something Is Killing the Children. I collected all the covers. I collected all the prints.
You were heavy in the game.
Very, very heavy. From pretty much the beginning. And it's just been, I'm excited about a show. I'm excited about, those casting announcements because, it's the type of book where you read through it and you're like, oh, who would play this? I mean, and I don't feel like it was written specifically to get a show written, but it very much lends itself to
it's cinematic.
It's very cinematic in the way that you're like, I want to see this.
I do hope that
in this way.
the rumors of Anya Taylor-Joy are true.
That would
because
be fun.
Besides the fact that it would be perfect casting, it would also explain why she won't text me back.
She's busy.
And I will say, this is a book like Saga where I don't think it's fallen off. There's a conception that is. I love the current. I've loved the current arc. What they're doing.
Well,
I love Erica. I love Erica.
Erica's amazing, and I love like. You could keep this going forever. Like, oh well, this first one was this, and now there's the duplicitype, and then there's like. But then there's also the asshole, like all great storytelling. There are the monsters, and then there are the other humans that you would perceptively think that are on your team, but they're just as big of monsters that you have to go through and you have to fight. And again, I completely agree with you. I don't feel like it's gone downhill. It's been a continuation. I think people have short attention. I think what's been going on is we have short attention spans. And as you get bombarded with more things, you're like, oh, well, this thing's not new and shiny anymore. That doesn't mean it's not good. It doesn't mean that
especially nowadays, again, a modern day independent creator-owned book going over 10 issues is amazing. And I think we've become so inured to short runs, 6 issues and whatnot. Whereas like if this was the 90s, every book goes into the 150s. But knowing that he has a story to tell, like he has a beginning, a succinct beginning, middle, and end. He has 75 issues planned. It's also like you feel like well in hand. Like he's not making it up as he goes. He has a story. Same with World Tree.
Yeah, I mean,
knowing that
you
you're in the
at the
hands
very
of a good
beginning,
storyteller.
if you asked me like, hey, do you think the next issue is going to be today? Do you think issue 36 is coming out? Right, that's the next one.
Yep, it's fantastic.
It's nuts.
I mean, I love it. I love it. So to have a book of that good, that high quality, that you can just rely on.
And the mythology. That's the other piece I want to say. That's why I don't want to throw out Book of Butcher and House of Slaughter. Like above and beyond, like so there's the character part. I care about Erica, and that's why I'm doing this as a companion thing. House of Slaughter is cool, and Book of Butcher is cool, and all those because you find out about this organization, and it's not like she is one specific type in one specific house in a much larger universe, and like expanding on that universe has been a lot of fun because you can care about this one person, Erica, but then everybody was clamoring like, well, why does that guy have a dragon mask? Or what does the blue one mean compared to the white one, compared to the red one, compared to the black one as far as the masks? And like going into all that stuff and explaining it and having it unfold has been a pure delight because it's just like,
imagine creating a world that rich and that ready to like
the opportunity to
I'll
do
tell you
so.
why. Yeah,
because he could just it still is a fine story if you have the first 15 like Archer's Peak and all that happens is Cecilia shows up and she's wearing a white one. You're like, why?
Can you imagine if he would had to do this in the mid '80s and he had to draw it and color it himself, and all the masks were the same color, like My Beloved Turtles, and then it wasn't until later, like, oh no, they're all
different masks. Yeah.
Yeah, so each one gets to have their own house, and it makes so much sense, and they all have their own purposes, and it's like, it's such a great world. I love this book, and again, sure, it might not be like changing the world, but boy, when you're reading it, you're having so much fun.
It's a lot of fun. It's definitely a lot of times I'll have to leak out, read the books, my polls and stuff like that over the course of a week because things get busy or whatever. This is always the day one. Like let's rock. Let's start this off with a bang. Yeah. It's consistent. So that's where I'm at with this. I mean, it's my favorite. I mean, I know it's as mainstream as it gets, but those are my favorite Boom books. I love those things.
That's it. Wait, was that number 1?
2 and 1 I had to combine.
Oh, okay,
that's why I was saying. So I'd say House would be 2 and the rest of the stuff.
No, that's 1. Good. Yeah. Well, Something That's Killing the Children is number 1. I mean,
that's my choice.
Can't argue with that.
Yep.
It's one of the best books going. And it's going to be like once it finishes, it will be one of like with Y the Last Man and blah blah. Like it'll be the book that you'll be giving people to read and stuff.
I cannot wait. I mean, I don't want it to be over yet, but I want that collected.
Boy, especially with all the spines. Yeah, because matching consecutive spines is one of the best things in life. Well, that brings me to number 1, and I don't know, friends, brothers, and sisters in this great community
I know what
we
this
called comics. I don't think you do. Maybe you do. Maybe I told you. If you
that's the only way it could possibly.
If you read anything that I have said today, I hope that you read this. I think it can only be. I don't think this was released ever in single issues. I think it was only released in the collected editions. There are 4 hardcovers collecting this. It's just this great adventure story. It's called Rust. Mm-hmm. One word by Royden Lepp. It's written and drawn. Did you know that was coming?
I knew that was coming.
Oh man, yeah, I love. It's Royden Lepp wrote
only because you told me at some point.
Okay, and he's an illustrator. He does like kids books. He does stuff for advertisements and everything. But this right here is his magnum opus. But it takes place in an undisclosed like Midwest or Rust Belt farm, and there's been some sort of world war going on, and this kid and his little brother, their parents died. He's taking care of the farm, trying to do what he can, trying to make his own way and take care of his little brother. One day, a little boy on a jetpack crash lands on the farm, and it's because he's being chased by a giant robot. What? and lo and behold, this kid gets up and he beats the giant robot, and you find out that the kid is he's an android of such. And this is supposed to be it's kind of an undisclosed time period, but it's hinted that this is the 30s or 40s. So now this kid is coming to their life. He's broken, but he is so helpful around the farm. Like he's fixing all of the tractors that were down. He's fixing all the equipment. He befriends the boy, but every once in a while a giant robot attacks, and it's like, I can't have you here with giant robots attacking, but it's also like, but the giant robots are bad and they're going to attack us anyway, so I guess, is it better to have them here or not? Are you bringing the danger, or would we be facing this danger inevitably?
Right.
And that's the premise, and that's a lot of the first book, and it goes through. There's four volumes, and they're very it's very light on dialogue. He tells the pictures with stories. He tells us
stories with pictures.
Yeah, I get a little excited. And I remember it's so the emotions soar. Whenever this kid Jet Jones is his name, because of course.
Why wouldn't his name be Jet Jones?
Yeah, it puts me in mind. There's this great underrated movie in 2004 called Sky Captain: The World of Tomorrow, which remembered what serial storytelling was. Remember what those rousing Flash Gordon adventures were, and that's what this was. But it all takes place on this farm for the most part. So it's what if a small part of those Flash Gordon adventures crash landed onto our farm, just crash it into our lives? Does it make our lives better? Does it make our lives richer? We weren't doing much before, and now it's we got this kid. All our stuff's working. The farm's making money finally, but those damn giant robots and those damn forces of evil. But it's shouldn't we take care of somebody who's fighting the forces of evil? It is a great story. It's called Rust, mostly for I guess it would be the Rust Belt.
That's a Superman story too.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's very much in that vein. The 38 Superman would very much be at home here. And Rust is also kind of the color palette. It doesn't stray too far from those shades of brown and amber and whatnot.
So from the art perspective, is it more like a traditional like superhero comic book thing, or is it more like Peanuts?
It strikes it's a great question, and that's a great comparison. It strikes a very good balance. I'd say it's 60% Peanuts, 40% superhero, because it's not full on cartoon by any means.
Sure.
It's not, the art isn't complex either. It's conveying, a farm and giant robots and farm equipment. So it doesn't have to, but
sure.
The way he draws, the way he conveys movement, the way he conveys emotion with these simple line drawings, like we talked about last week with Faith Aaron Hicks, is you can't compare it. You can't duplicate it. You either have that gift or you don't. Sure. And boy, does Royden have it in spades. I wish he would do another comic, but if he never does, at least we got this absolute masterpiece of a comic called Rust.
That's awesome.
That's it. I mean, that's my top 10.
Cool,
Those
man.
are my favorite Boom comics. A great publisher, a great independent publisher that everybody should be supporting, because they need your help. They need your sales. They're telling, like I say, I think the best comic stories ever written are being written right now. And
a bunch of good stuff.
Boom are doing some of those. So
and Boom, for those of you unfamiliar, you can go to boomstudios.com, and a lot of these books and stuff we've talked about, they've got like free previews and stuff like that you can download. So even if you're a type of person where you like to see if it's like aesthetically it's going to be something that you like and things like that, like you can even go to their website and kind of like Rust is even one of those for sure. I know for a fact they've got a free preview because I checked that out. You can just go there and kind of download that and check it out and see if you like it or not, and then obviously you can come into the shop. We can order whatever you want if you want to keep going with it. But I think that, I'm a huge fan, and I guess to wrap this up, I'm going to do this, but I do also want to touch on something else that happened this week. I can't get off without talking about Ultimate Spider-Man for a bit.
Absolutely. Oh, what a.
But Boom is one of those studios where they have been consistent in storytelling. They take risks, and most people are rewarded for taking a risk on buying those books.
Yeah.
Like they've been very solid. That's the whole reason why, dedicating an entire episode to that studio. Like they're worthy of the attention. We've done Image.
These guys are great.
Yeah. And they're taking chances on books, and I feel like, we kind of did this because people should be taking a chance on them as well.
Yeah, like where else are you going to find a book like Layla Starr? You
Right.
know? That's
Or Rare Flavors. It's weird, but it's amazing.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I'm having such a blast with the Rare Flavors, and I also have no idea where it's going.
No idea.
And I love that. But I know Ram will take me there, and I will be enlightened, I will be satisfied, and it'll be a great journey, like most of these books that we've said.
So I guess what I'm going to do at this point is, and this is going to be the only time it's ever been appropriate as far as instead of just fast forward part, like I want to do this with spoilers, I guess, where people would perceive as spoilers. Like I don't want to have to
spoil
hold
Ultimate
back.
Spider-Man 1? That's fine.
I do. I just want to talk. I want to speak
for 5
freely
days.
about
You should
it.
have read it.
Yes. So if you have not read Ultimate Spider-Man 1 and you intend on doing so, I apologize, but from this point on, it's not going to be safe. So for those of you that have to leave, we will see you next week. We hope you had a good time. For those of you that don't care or have read it,
Ultimate Spider-Man 1 was so good.
Ultimate Spider-Man 1 was so good.
This is the best single issue of Spider-Man that I've read in years.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't do. It takes all the. All right, so
Spider-Man's not in that book.
he's never suited up. That is a misleading cover.
Yeah.
But they're all great. The covers are all great.
Yep.
When you find when you first are introduced to J. Jonah Jameson, he's not being a jerk. He's just being a pretty stern editor, and like, what's soften this guy up? And then
First scene, he's just yelling Parker. You're
Parker,
like, sweet.
Parker. And then he sees Peter and he's like, oh, hey, Peter. And then he starts yelling Parker again. Who is he talking about?
Right.
Then he goes in the office of his partner at the Daily Bugle. Who is that?
Uncle Ben.
Uncle Ben. Uncle Ben never died. Not in the Ultimate Universe.
Yep. But also, Peter's getting ready to go to work.
Peter's
there? Who's at the house?
Peter's a journalist at the Daily Bugle, and his wife, Mary Jane, and their 2 kids. Something in May. The daughter's name is May. What was his name?
Isn't it Reed? No, not Reed. It's something. No, it's
Frank. Frank.
Richard.
Was it Richard?
Forget. It's something related to. I remember, like, who is he talking? What is he referring to? But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, because we like it, and then and Peter. If you've read Ultimate Invasion, you know that the Maker is going back and he's preventing all the heroes from becoming heroes. So he stops a young Peter Parker from ever getting bit by the spider. So this is a Peter Parker who is in his mid-30s. Mm-hmm. He's happily married to Mary Jane. They have 2 kids. He works at the Daily Bugle as a journalist, print journalist, I believe. I don't think he's the photographer. And he has a good life, but he feels like something's missing. He's not doing what he was supposed to. There's
something's missing.
Something more with my life, and I just don't know what it is. And we've all had, that existential crisis. We've all thought that maybe is this what we're supposed to be doing? In his case, he's right. He should have been bitten by a radioactive spider in his teens and been fighting crime this entire time.
So, but there's some beautiful, like, character moments in there. There's a spot where, there's a lot that's, without spoiling the entire book, I guess, but you have some cool cameos, like Matt Murdock is there, but not in the capacity that you're used to seeing him in.
Matt Murdock, because he also was prevented from ever becoming a superhero, but he still has his crisis of faith. He's still a devout Catholic, so he is, of course, officiating at the service as a reverend.
Yep. And on this Earth, there was a giant event, and that's all Tony Stark's fault.
Yeah.
Right. But if you've read the Invasion and then also the Ultimate Universe one shot, that Tony isn't actually the cause of it. He was set up.
Yeah.
There's just so many cool character moments in this book, and I cannot get over.
It's a celebration of Spider-Man without being so, I don't know, because it's written by Jonathan Hickman, one of the greatest to ever do it. It's so confident.
And I've seen a lot of people. There's been about a lot of agreeance on the internet. Not that that's everything that matters, but I guess the impressive part is I've seen more people being like, "Yeah, this is great," than I ever have. There's plenty of people that are willing to ruin your day for pretty much anything at all times. And I haven't seen a ton of that. I've seen people that are like, I just refused flat out to read Hickman because I don't think he's fun. You weren't going to please those people. They weren't going to read the book to begin with. But the people that have read it, it's pretty much been universal. Like, yeah, this is a Spider-Man book I was looking for. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is it. This one right here. This is the thing I was looking for. Like, I don't mind seeing Peter and Mary Jane have moments together. I want her to call him Tiger, and she still calls him Tiger
without winking at you.
But they're together.
Yeah,
she calls him. And like the relationship is
the way they speak as a married couple.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's sweet. And then there's the kids. I love it. Like I told you the one. Like it really got to me when she called him. She's like Peter, you're a lights out father.
Nah.
I'm like, that's cool. Like that's the voice. Like that's her giving him props. Like and
yeah.
it was very sweet and it was nice.
Just as supportive as she would be, as you imagine, because she was always meeting him more than halfway as a girlfriend when he was Spider-Man, and now
sure
she like as a wife she'd be terrific, and he if he was a completely devoted husband, like he'd be great, and he is. He'd be a great dad, and he is. But he felt like there was more, and it ends like with a visit.
Yep. Yeah, sure. You don't have to ruin all of that stuff. Like you still should have some reasons to read it.
He does end up as Spider-Man.
He does, yes.
But Spider-Man, who just now, and we don't know where it's going to go, but he just now is going to. So he has to become, acclimated to his powers in his mid-30s. It's hard enough to learn anything
with kids
in your mid-30s, yeah, and balance life and work. And now he's going to have to try to save the multiverse. I don't know. Seems to me like a setup for a pretty good adventure story.
Absolutely.
Can you imagine not reading Jonathan Hickman because he's not fun? How uninteresting of a person can you be?
I mean, it's the argument. Like all he does is world building. I'm like, if you think that that's the case and you haven't like actually experienced his character moments, hey, I mean,
sure,
to each their own. But I'm saying I don't see that personally. Yeah. Like I appreciate the character moments and I can see those character moments and I think that there's a lot more there. But I mean, he does have a reputation for being the event guy. I mean, I can understand that.
Yeah, sure.
But he's an event guy that's worthy of writing an event.
Yeah, I mean, because Joshua Williamson is becoming known as the DC event guy, and it's like those are two different leagues, man.
Yes, yeah. I agree. He's not at that point, or he hasn't. I mean,
but Hickman,
Night Terrors is good, but that was also a 2-month thing that told. Like, it's essentially a 5-issue story.
I don't think anybody besides I don't think anybody can do what Jonathan Hickman does.
Sure.
I think only he can do what he does, and I think it's beautiful. And you know what? I'm glad it's for Marvel because I want a compelling reason to go heavy into Marvel again, like I used to. But it's been a few years, and this would be a great way to dive back in. And who better than with your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man?
Absolutely. And with that, I want to remind everybody that Ultimate Black Panther and Ultimate X-Men are coming up. Get those on the poll list. Peach Momoko, absolutely. But that's going to do it for us today, which is Sunday, January 14th. This will be posted tomorrow, and we will see you next week.